Are we on?
We might very well be. Yeah, according to this, we are. There we go.
There we are.
Joe Chaffee, Fios 1 News, Long Island, and Fios 1 News, New Jersey.
And Joe Rayo, Fios 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley. We're in parts of the Lower Hudson Valley today. As we had indicated last night, Joe, we had some brush fire activity because of the wind and the very dry weather that ensued through much of the day.
Well, speaking of dry, I pulled up here. I have the 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. Eastern Time relative humidity readings around the area.
Huh.
Okay? And take a look at this, folks. You'd think we were in Arizona. These are relative humidity levels. We've got dew point. I was looking at LaGuardia. They have a dew point of 10 with a temperature of 60.
So these are dew points, not
No. This is relative humidity.
Oh, okay. All right.
18% relative humidity.
Wow.
That's Farmingdale. 12% relative humidity at LaGuardia. That's up from 10% an hour ago. Okay, you just don't see
at night.
Well, now that it's sundown. Montauk's a relatively humid 41% relative humidity. You go back in the past springs, we get days like this where you get the humidity down. I can remember a number of times you get the humidity down in the 15 to 20% range. This is about as low as you can get with some of these numbers. It's just insane, and it's down even into southeastern Pennsylvania, high teens. It's actually higher as you go up into upstate New York and up through Connecticut, where you got humidity levels in the 40% range plus. But nope, not here. We are literally in the desert here.
And it's going to be not quite as dry, I think, tomorrow. Well, it will be dry in the sense that we're not going to see any precipitation tomorrow, but the winds are going to be shifting and also diminishing considerably. We had gusts, to over 30 miles an hour during the afternoon hours.
I think it might have been higher than that. Let me switch this to the wind and see what that brings us. Hang on. So let's go to wind gust. So these are the current gusts, which are down from earlier. There were some up there well into the 30s in a few places. Although LaGuardia's got a gust of 39, but everybody else gusts running 20 to 30, 20 to 25, a bit above that. But yeah, the winds are definitely down from what they were earlier.
And for those who are watching right now, the current time is 9:20, coming up on 9:26. And we still have a red flag warning that will be continuing until 11 o'clock tonight. Quite frankly, Joe, I was saying to myself, they'll probably take that down after sunset. But now I could see why they would want to maintain it till 11 o'clock tonight with the wind still rather active and with the very dry conditions out there. You could still see a couple of flare-ups, if you will, between now and later this evening.
Sure. I just want to check, see if... see what the Weather Service is doing with regards to this. And of course, there we go. So there's a red flag warning remains in effect till 11 o'clock. This is for New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. Okay. And I know New York, Upton has a fire weather watch from Thursday morning through early Thursday evening for New York City and northeast New Jersey. I just wonder if the dew points are going to start coming up. The wind's going around more onshore-ish. I don't know. I just kind of think maybe...
I was surprised to hear that. I would have thought that tomorrow, again, will be a dry day, much less wind than what we had today. I still don't know why they would... but, I'm tired of trying to figure these things out. If you remember last night, I said, why is it that Albany has... statements on potential dry and red flag conditions for today and all of New Jersey, but the Lower Hudson Valley didn't. And,
and then they played catch up this morning.
Right.
They put it up for most west of the Hudson, but not east of the Hudson, and they had to add east of the Hudson. Yeah. This is the storm, by the way, from yesterday that I don't know what I got for rainfall, but I from when I went out this morning. I don't think I even got 1/10 of an inch out my way in central Long Island.
Well, when we headed out last night after we were done here, it was raining very, very lightly. but I knew that as I traveled north on the Taconic Parkway that I was eventually going to move out of that, and I did, and had got a chance to turn the windshield wipers off. And I don't really think I had where I live much at all. I forgot to check the Potachbo rain gauge amount, but it didn't amount to much of anything. I woke up this morning; it was brilliantly clear and sunny, and it turned out to be a nice day.
Here's the satellite loop. It's a little bit behind, but you could see on the upper right is the storm that developed offshore. It was very impressive looking on the satellite overnight and this morning. Now moving through Nova Scotia and on its way to Newfoundland and Labrador. And meanwhile, bone dry, clear skies everywhere. We had cloud-free skies today, pretty much. Right. And you don't really see that too often around here. There's usually something cloud-wise somewhere.
Well, tomorrow we will have clouds, but they're going to be of the thin, high variety.
And maybe not till later.
Right. And tomorrow the Mets start the season at Citi Field, and it looks like it will be a nice day for baseball. I've known many an opening day at both Citi Field, well, especially Shea Stadium, where they've had, frigid conditions and even snow. I went to one opening day where the snow was under the seats, but that will not be the story tomorrow. Tomorrow will be in the mid-50s, and aside from those thin clouds, it should be a pretty nice day for baseball.
Yeah, we're starting to see some rain breaking out across parts of Illinois, back through Iowa, Missouri, and on up into parts of South Dakota and northeast Nebraska. So all of that is that is the weather system that's headed our way for Friday. And spring, Joe, is also, as we know, is known for its wonderful onshore flows around here, and that looks to be setting up for Friday morning. I'll just back it up because there's another system coming in for early next week that's kind of similar to this. But that's actually a chill. There's some chillier air coming down for tomorrow night, and we were talking about this earlier today. You and I, it wouldn't be a shock. You get the little precip that runs in early Friday morning if it holds together into that colder air. It wouldn't be at all a shock if somebody sees some ice pellets out of this in the northern and western counties of New Jersey and maybe up your way in the Hudson Valley as well.
Now, you don't think that they would issue, they being the Weather Service, that they for the few pellets of ice or sleet that may fall, that they would issue some kind of a winter weather advisory?
Oh, they better not. Okay. The problem on Friday, as always this time of year, is trying to get... I don't even know how to quite describe this. There's a very weak low with this that you can barely find, and there's I guess a very there's a warm front of some sort that is setting up to our south, and of course those warm fronts love to struggle through here. It appears to me, and I'm kind of going on the idea that we're going to have a decent weekend, but I never like to see these sort of diffuse pressure patterns, because sometimes there's no real push.
Right.
You got a wrapped up system like you did yesterday. There's a force to it. There's a push. It gets everything moving along. I'm just a little bit worried that this warm front struggles. It basically falls apart on top of us, and there's not a whole lot of wind. Not much of a drying wind behind it. That at least for the first part of Saturday, maybe we're struggling with some leftover clouds, and that could impact temperatures. I don't know. I'm just a little worried about that early on. I'm thinking eventually the drier air should take over for the second half of the day at the very least.
I was just struggling just to figure out whether or not, come let's say 8 a.m. Saturday morning, are we done with the precipitation, or do we still have dribbly, drabbly, spotty leftover precip to deal with, as you just alluded to, for the first part of the day on Saturday, before things start to dry out and clear out and the sun comes out. And once the sun comes out, even if it's late in coming out, I think Saturday afternoon, the temperatures immediately are going to react by bouncing right on up through the 50s and even into the 60s.
Well, the NAM has it gone by 8 a.m. and then it'll be a question of how much clearing are we going to see. But I'm going to lean on the optimistic side that we'll see at least some sun developing during the day, and that should hopefully push temperatures up into the 60s. And I'm thinking that Sunday will be okay. Also, because there's a lot of room between where we are and the next low coming out of the southern plains that heads to the western lakes. It looks like it's a little bit slower with bringing rain here, maybe not until overnight, Sunday night into Monday morning. But this, again, Joe, looks like another
one of those
warm fronts. And actually, I saw this earlier, get a kick out of this. So I was looking at the GFS with regards to Monday and Tuesday, and I want to just also talk about the blocking pattern that's setting up. So at least for Monday and Tuesday, you can see how warm it is just to our south, 60s and 70s down through Virginia and West Virginia, at least according to the world of the GFS, which, by the way, is got a more of a dire look to Monday than the European has, to an extent. Okay, but going into Tuesday, now if we're sitting in this where Long Island, New York City, northern New Jersey, north are in the low to mid 40s, and central, but particularly South Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania could be in the mid to upper 70s. I mean, there'll be a third from Sussex would be 43, and Atlantic City will be 79. You know,
and somebody,
it's that time of year where this sort of stuff can happen.
And somebody in that type of scenario, there could very well be thick, dense fog or dense fog advisories posted near or along the boundary zone between those two different air masses. So, yeah, that's a nice way to kick off the week next week on Monday with that kind of scenario.
Now, I'm pulling up this hemispheric view because I want to show everybody to look right near the center of the picture, and you're going to see something that the snow lovers were waiting for all winter, and it never happened. And of course, now that we're in the spring, when you do get this, but we have a big upper high that forms over Scandinavia, migrates over Iceland and into Greenland, and there you have right there. There's your big block that you were waiting for all winter long, and it never happened.
Well, sometimes in some cases the delivery takes a little longer than you put in the order and.
Well, this is the one time a year where you really don't want to see this, if only because of the fact that it just makes the weather just very miserable around here, and I said this to you last night. I'll say it again. I am not a fan of the spring season at all. It is such torture dealing with this. But I pulling this up. This is the map for. Actually, this is the upper air for next Wednesday, so I just kind of jumped ahead. But this block that's going to develop over the weekend and next week is likely to impact our weather through at least the middle part of next week, and maybe even a bit beyond it. What you have, folks, is pretty simply, the whole jet. This is a time of year where the jet stream in general is starting to weaken. The polar jet is starting to weaken, and you have this big upper high now across the northernmost region. So what happens? The jet stream winds up getting suppressed way to the south, as you can see it here, and then you have these lovely little what we call these cutoff lows that develop. And here's one over us. There's this one out in the Pacific, but you start to get all these cutoffs, especially on the Atlantic side. And if you're in the wrong place with these things, this is where it could be cloudy and gloomy and damp and rainy for days and days at a time. And I think we might be getting into a stretch like that for at least the first half of next week with this.
This is kind of like being on the expressway and having two lanes closed. Everybody's trying to merge into a third lane, and you're moving along at like 3 miles an hour. And this is how it's going to be. Looks like for at least part of next week, meteorologically.
Yep.
Everything moving very slowly, very sluggishly, and unfortunately, it's the game of the draw, so to speak. If you have a nice, dry, fair weather air mass over you, you'll have many, many days of very lovely weather. But if you're stuck with drecky weather, the dreck is going to be stretched for more than just a day or two, and it looks like we may end up on that side of the coin for a while next week.
Correct. So big hello to everybody on board, including Kevin Bolger, who apparently likes Stereo Joes, and your buddy Dennis Cassia, who now is one of my top fans.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I spoke with Dennis today. He's urging me, and I won't say that. I'll mention it tomorrow, and especially so on Friday. This weekend is the big Northeast Astronomy Forum at Rockland Community College, and yours truly is going to be the one who is going to deliver the opening address for the upwards to 3,000 amateur and professional astronomers come to this. It's the biggest gathering. And if you want to buy something for your telescope, or you want to buy a telescope or binoculars or cameras or whatever like that, you have to come to this place. And that, plus the fact that the speakers are going to be number one. Some of the top speakers in the field will be there. And anyway, I will kick things off 10:30 on Saturday morning. And Dennis is going to be there, as well as a lot of other people. So if you're into astronomy, that's the place to be this weekend.
By the way, I want to say a quick hi to Steve Asman. He makes the Gustbuster umbrellas.
Really?
Yeah, and those umbrellas are amazing. Did I give you one of them? I gave you one of them. I didn't give you one?
No, you didn't give me one.
I didn't give you a Joe Stradamus Gustbuster umbrella.
No, you did not give me a...
All right, I have to give you I'll bring it in tomorrow. I thought I did. The umbrellas are great. They hold... They're really, really sturdy, and they hold up to... almost hurricane force winds.
Good Lord.
Yes, and they're very big too, so they'll protect your hair.
It's like the bubble umbrellas. Remember those?
Yeah, no, these are really good umbrellas. I'll bring one in tomorrow.
Here's a question which you might want to throw out to the viewership here, and we were discussing this some weeks or months ago, or whatever like that. Coming up with a Joe and Joe mug.
Oh, we've been talking about that. Yeah, I got to. We got to get a picture of it.
Yeah.
We got to get a picture of you and I together, a good shot. And
you think anybody would be interested in having one?
Well, you never know. We'll try.
Well, I mean,
the
shower curtain was a big seller.
I actually did, believe it or not. But yeah, we got the 4 Easter. You got the 4 Easter.
Oh
mug.
Yeah.
That you got.
Yes.
Okay, so I got to bring you the Joe Stradamus umbrella for tomorrow.
Right.
Where was the block in the winter? Asked Jason Kaplan. It was one of the most uneventful winters ever. Well,
and you want to know something, Jason? I don't know. I can't speak for Joe. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Well, blocks in the wintertime are elusive because in the wintertime there's too much going on in the atmosphere where you've got strong weather systems. There's a tendency for things to really move along with strong jet streams, both the polar jet and the subtropical jet. So to get a block to form in that environment is kind of tough. But when you're in the spring and the jet streams are naturally weakening,
right,
as the atmosphere is warming, that's when you have a much more a greater likelihood of seeing these blocking highs forming.
Right.
And of course, as we know, it makes for just miserable, especially on Long Island. It just makes things absolutely miserable. I'm just trying to see if there's any. Everybody's out there enjoying the bone dry air. And actually, by the way, Joe, today on Long Island, because there was a west wind, it got into the mid-60s. This was the warmest day of the spring so far.
Joe
bobbleheads. Well, we could do that.
that would be interesting.
We'll have to figure all these things out. Are the highs not going to make it out of the 40s early next week? Ben Kriegel. Well, you saw in that temperature map I had earlier. Depending on where you are, if you're I think the chances of that happening, say, from northern New Jersey and Long Island northward, are a lot higher, are going to be higher, as opposed to if you're, say, in New Jersey from 195 southward.
And you were here when I brought this up earlier on in the day at the Weather Center when we had also our colleagues Addison and Brittany. And I noticed Brittany went for a high on Friday in the Hudson Valley. And this is just an average high. This is on her 7-day forecast of 39. And I said to her, are you sure about that? 39 degrees for a high temperature? You don't think it's going to get any higher than that? And then I started thinking to myself, it's not out of the question. I went 45 for a high on Friday. Again, an average. But it would not be at all surprising to see on Friday in much of the Hudson Valley now low 40s or near 40 for a high temperature. This coming off a day today where we had temperatures in the mid to upper 60s. This is the cruelty. Well, who said that? Was it T.S. Eliot? April is the cruelest month?
The cruelest month.
And this is an example.
Here comes April, babbling like an idiot, strewing flowers. It was actually the poem was, I think it was Eliot. The poem was written really as a metaphor to World War I.
Uh-huh.
With all the death and destruction, and in the midst of all of this, spring still came, and the flowers still bloomed.
Right.
and it just seemed, kind of juxtaposed. You get a lot. You get like really cultural stuff on this show, by the way.
Right.
I think it was.
But it is cruel from a meteorological standpoint in that here we are today. We're just sitting in temperatures in the mid to upper 60s, bone dry out there right now, and in 48 hours we may be talking about how ugly and how terrible the day was. Not so much it's going to be stormy on Friday, but just going to be like, it's going to lay there, cloudy, miserable, dank, dreary, a November-type day coming our way on Friday.
One of the best comedians around is watching tonight, Joe Vinny Dice Ruggiero. Hi to you. Bob Russo watching. Matt Steckler. I think I saw Timothy Veltman on here as well. David Schwartz. Jimmy Zindel is on. It's nice to see folks come on when the weather is nice. Everybody crowds on when the weather is crazy, and that's understandable. But it's nice to see the regulars on here. Keith Scally, Greenland Block. Where the hell have you been? That's true. Also, I did see Jessica Zerbis. I'm moving to the Great North River, and I'm seeing big weather differences from North Shore, where I am now, to over there, where you're going to be right on the near Connecticut Park. There are some big differences, Jessica. You're going to love it on the South Shore in the late spring and in the early part of the summer, when the sea breeze comes in and the inland areas are up at well up into the 80s to near 90, and you get the nice breeze off the ocean until you get to August, and then it just shuts off. But this time of year, all of Long Island suffers with the onshore wind, but the South Shore always seems to get it first on those really nice days. But I fish down there too, so I fish down in Great River, and also occasionally in the Connecticut River at the spillway at Bubbles Falls.
See, now we had the west wind today, so even on Long Island, it was a gloriously mild day out there with many areas in the 60s.
This was the warmest day of the spring so far. It was warmer today than it was back on Saturday, when temperatures got into the 70s in a lot of places.
Right.
All right, so I think we can wrap it up here at this point. We're in that funny time of year, Joe. We're out of the winter season. The hurricane season's still a couple of months away. By the way, one thing I did notice, as I happened to look at it, it looks to me that the El Nino is weakening. The waters off South America, the equator, up into the areas north of Central America. Now, the water temperatures there have cooled rapidly and are now below average.
Right.
There's still a big body of above normal temperatures going out into the Central Pacific, but on the east part of where the El Nino is, it looks like it's weak. It's starting to weaken. See,
now the Climate Prediction Center waited and they waited and they waited. They had the El Nino watch, and they waited, and finally they declared it's an El Nino. It's a weak one, but it's a. And now, if you're correct, it's all but.
Well, if that is, water temperatures can change in a heartbeat sometimes. But if the El Nino does weaken, that will have implications on the hurricane season. Perhaps. Making it more active if the El Nino completely disappears, as opposed to having it there, which would make the activity a bit more subdued.
And you remember last year we were talking about how cold the waters were in places in the tropical Atlantic, and speculating on whether or not this was going to be a big suppression to the hurricane season. And look what happened in the end. We got to September, and everything just lit up. So. You don't have to have a ton of hurricanes out there. All you need is just one or two to. Are you looking up that T.S. Eliot poem?
Oh my God, this poem is endless. Here we go. Yeah.
The Wasteland by T.S.
April is the cruelest month breeding, lilacs out of the dead land mixing, memory and desire stirring, dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dry tubers. Summer surprised us. All right, so anyway, he goes on. So I might be confusing it with one other poem.
All I asked was, who said April was the cruelest month? I took a guess at T.S. Eliot.
This is actually quite the weather poem, too. What the thunder said. I didn't know that thunder spoke.
I didn't know either.
With the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying, prison and palace and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains, He who was living is now dead. We who are living are now dying with little patience. And since our audience might be at this point running out of patience, we better say goodbye. Joe and I have the top of the hour because he has to be at Lower Hudson Valley, FiOS 1 News.
And you have to be in Long Island. You have to be in two places at once.
Yes, I need to divide myself.
Exactly. Split personality, Mr. Chiaffi. He's on in Long Island and also in New Jersey. And no emergencies were declared today.
No. Brian Fitzgerald will be here tomorrow morning to get you started on your Thursday, which is my favorite day of the week.
And Addison Green and Brittany Bora will be back in the midday hours, and then we will be here later tomorrow and back here tomorrow night.
All right.
To tell you how lousy Friday is going to be.
For another poetry reading.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Nighty-night.